What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Bird Dog Gaming, where today we're going to cover a topic that is just so large that I had to get some help from somebody all the way out in Florida. You know her as the co-host of the Unlockable podcast.
Hello.
Hannah, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Great. Thanks for coming all the way across the country to record this video with me.
No problem.
You are, from what I understand, a Nintendo 64 expert.
Yeah, I'd like to think so.
Okay. And you know more than Miyamoto himself.
Probably not.
Awesome.
That much.
Thank you so much. So let's go ahead and get started with some background information. The Nintendo 64 has a whopping 296 titles in its entire library. Just under 300 titles, but still way more, almost double what the Wii U library has. In this video, we're going to be discussing every single Nintendo 64 exclusive game.
And exclusive means it can't be played on the PS1, the Dreamcast, the PC, or even the Virtual Consoles.
That's right, so any game that made it to the Wii's Virtual Console or the Wii U's Virtual Console, you got your Mario Kart, your Mario Party, we're not going to be discussing those. They're not part of the exclusive Nintendo 64 set just because they can be played on other platforms. With that being said, there are some games on the Nintendo 64 that made it to the Game Boy Color kind of as a port, but not really because of system compatibilities. Those will be counted as Nintendo 64 exclusives.
So let's take a look at how relevant this system right here still is in 2020.
This video will be a lot like my Wii U video, and just like in that video, we'll be going in alphabetical order. So the first two games are 2007 games, Goldeneye and The World Is Not Enough. Goldeneye was a huge success, and people who grew up with the game always correlate the N64 to this game. This was a lot of people's first FPS game. It's always appearing in top 10 lists and being fondly remembered as a game that people would just have hours and hours of fun with. Most importantly, it's remembered for its 4-player split screen. As for the other title, it seems like no one grew up with that one. Both had solid reviews though, with GoldenEye receiving a 96% Metascore and The World Is Not Enough getting an 81%. Aero Fighter's Assault was a combat flight simulator that did so poorly that this was actually the final game put out by publisher Video System before they filed for bankruptcy. I think I rented this one as a kid and was super disappointed. 5 out of 10 on IGN. AeroGauge, on the other hand, was a futuristic racer, kind of like a few other games on this list you may have heard of. If you could only choose one, it probably wouldn't be this one. A solid 5.2 from IGN, 4.5 on GameSpot. Aidyn Chronicles, the first Mage. This is the first RPG on the list, but unfortunately it's got some pretty weak reviews and really doesn't look too fun. This is another title unworthy of defending the N64's legacy. The next three are certainly unworthy: All-Star Baseball 99, 2000, and, you guessed it, 2001. These three released on the Game Boy Color but were obviously a little different. Asteroids Hyper 64 was just Asteroids with some 64-bit visuals, I guess. Really not something that belonged on the N64. The first of many, many arcade racers on the N64, Automobili Lamborghini. This one had a 7.7 at GameStop and a little bit lower score on IGN. It, along with its prequel on the Super Nintendo, was developed and published by Titus. In Japan, it was updated and given a subtitle, Super Speed Race 64. Bass Hunter 64 and Bass Masters. Do you want to be a regular old hunter, or do you want to be a master? Battletanks got an exclusive N64 release, aside from the GBC counterpart of the same name, but its sequel was cross-platform, being released on the PlayStation.
Explosive tank action for up to 4 players.
Battletanks.
First on the list is Beetle Adventure Racing. I actually really like this game, and I definitely recommend you play it. It was developed by Paradigm Entertainment and published by Electronic Arts, back when EA published games without microtransactions. Big Mountain 2000 is a skiing and snowboarding racing game for the Nintendo 64. It is known in Japan as Snowspeeder, which I think is a way better name. It was developed by Imagineer and Natsume and published by Snow Peak Games and Imagineer. It was rated 6 out of 10 by IGN. Blues Brother 2000 is a music video platformer loosely based on the band and the movie of the same name. It was released in 2000. I wonder if that was intentional. It was developed by Player One and published by Titus Interactive SA. Body Harvest, which sounds terrifying, is an action-adventure third-person shooter. It was supposed to be a launch title for the Nintendo 64, but it was delayed because Nintendo, who was originally going to be the publisher, didn't like the game's violence, so Nintendo decided not to publish it. The game was eventually picked up and published by Midway Games and Gremlin Interactive in 1998. Next on the list is Bomberman 64: The Second Attack, which is a sequel to Bomberman 64, which was released in 1997. The sequel was published by Vatical Entertainment and released 2 years later in 1999. This game was not released in the UK. Buck Bumble is an action game developed by a gaming company across the pond called Argonaut Software and published by Ubisoft in 1998. A Rumble Pack was included with the UK version, and it was rated a 5.2 out of 10 by GameSpot, but I have heard that this is a very underrated aerial shooter. Next on the list are Castlevania and Castlevania Legacy of Darkness, being released in 1999. Both of these are the same game, but Legacy of Darkness is an expanded version. I don't know why Konami did this, but they did. Anyways, next on the list is Chameleon Twist and Chameleon Twist 2, developed by Japan System Supply and published by Sunsoft in 1997 and 1999 respectively. It was rated a 6.5 by IGN, with critics saying that it had difficult controls, but despite that, it has gained quite a cult following because of its uniqueness. Chopper Attack is a helicopter-based third-person shooter game released in 1997. It was developed by Seta Corporation and published by Midway Games. It was rated a 6.4 by GameSpot.
Here's a big one every collector knows about, Clay Fighter 63 and a third. There are 2 releases on the platform, with the second one being what I like to call a DLC version with the subtitle Sculptor's Cut. Obviously, it's one of the most expensive games on the platform, and it's kind of rare because it may have been a Blockbuster exclusive or whatever, but here's a lesser known fact about the series. Did you know there was a DSiWare and WiiWare Clay Fighter title that got cancelled? It was going to be called Clay Fighter Call of Putty. I love it. As far as gameplay goes, it's just your typical fighter. It's got pretty rough reviews. Deadly Arts is a game that actually came to Europe before it came to North America, which is something you don't see a lot. Outside of North America, it was titled Gasp! Fighters Next Stream, with GASP being an acronym for Generations of Art, Speed, and Power. As cool as you may think this one sounds from the title, don't be dismayed as it got a 3.4 on GameSpot and even lower from IGN. Nice work, Konami. Dr. Mario 64 has surprisingly not been ported to any other platform, physically or digitally. I mean, it was available on the iQ player if you really want to be that guy. Count it if you want, don't if you don't. The Wii U got Dr. Luigi on the eShop though, so I'm sure you could get your fix that way if you really wanted to. Reviews were anywhere from 5 to 7 out of 10. I'm sure it's a decent game, but not one that you'd buy the console specifically for. This next one is a fighting game for the platform titled Duel Heroes. It had awesome reviews. We're talking an average of 3 out of 10. Obviously a must-have for the Nintendo 64. I'd like to point out that Nintendo Power gave this game a 6.6 out of 10 back in the day. You think they were a little biased? Maybe just a wee bit? Next up is the only Looney Tunes game released on the platform, at least here in North America, Duck Dodgers starring Daffy Duck. Europe, however, got a region-exclusive Looney Tunes game titled Taz Express, based on everyone's favorite Tasmanian Devil. As you'd expect, Duck Dodgers is a pretty basic 3D platformer, probably nothing to write home about. In 1998, the PlayStation got an exclusive Duke Nukem game titled Time to Kill. Then, a year later, Duke Nukem 0 Hour released as an exclusive to the N64 to strong reviews in the 8 out of 10 range. This game is one you won't see on the N64 top 10 lists, but it is one that people still talk about and remember as being one of their nostalgic favorites. Extreme G. I can understand where the extreme part comes from, but what the heck does the G stand for? This is another one of those F-Zero styled arcade racers, except your bike is equipped with a weapon so you can light up your opponents. pretty solid reviews overall, 7s and 8s across the board. The sequel, Extreme G2, was also an N64 game, but not exclusive to the platform as it was released for Windows computers. F1 Pole Position is another N64 exclusive racing game. You would think it would be a sequel to the title Pole Position, a classic arcade game everyone knows, but no, it's a part of the Human Grand Prix series. Duh. This one has pretty lousy review scores and you can't even race your friends. It doesn't offer multiplayer. Come on, they gave you 4 controller ports on this console, you're not even going to use 2 of them? Alright, this one should really grind your gears. Fighter's Destiny came out exclusively for the Nintendo 64 in 1998, right? Tell me why the 2000 sequel was named Fighter Destiny 2. What? What the heck happened to the S? Was this a typo? What was wrong with Fighters? Whatever. It's a 2D fighter that got some 7s and 8s from most reviewers. The sequel didn't do quite as well, probably because it dropped the S.
Flying Dragon, or Fist of the Flying Dragon Twin as it's known in Japan, is a fighting game with role-playing video game elements, and was released on December 18th, 1997 in Japan, July 31st, 1998 in North America, and July 25th, 1999 in Europe. Flying Dragon is also the name of a NES game released by Culture Brain in 1989, which is part of the same series. Fox Sports College Hoops 99! Surprise! It's a basketball game. It's one of the many sports titles on the Nintendo 64. Since Star Fox was released on the Wii U Virtual Console and the 3DS, I guess this is the only exclusive Fox game. And surprise, surprise, it's another racing game. This time it's GT64 Championship Edition. This game was developed by Imagineer and released in 1998, and that's all that I have to say about it. Mystical Ninja is a platform action-adventure game developed and released by Konami in Japan on August 7th, 1997, North America on April 16th, 1998, and it released 2 days later in Europe. It is the 5th game in the Ganbare Goemon series, and the 2nd Goemon game released in North America. Next on the list is the sequel, Goemon's Great Adventure, or Mystical Ninja 2, starring Goemon, also developed by Konami. This is absolutely a series I'd like to play, if I ever got my hands on it. We're in a casino with Golden Nugget 64. You guessed it, it's a virtual casino game. It was developed by Westwood Studios and published by EA. Maybe this is where they got their gambling mechanics. The next game is Hercules, The Legendary Journeys. Oh wait, so Hercules is the god of lightning. No wait, that's Zeus? But Hercules is the son of Zeus. Thor? You know what? Never mind. This is an action-adventure game with beat-em-up elements. It is not associated with Disney, and it is completely different than the Game Boy Color game. And it has a 55 on Metacritic. Next is Hey You Pikachu! Exclamation point. It was developed by Umbrella. Like Umbrella, but with an A. And published by Nintendo. It is one of 2 games that use the N64's voice recognition unit. It is one of those unique spin-off Pokemon games that only Nintendo would try to do.
Alright, it's 1999, Konami is still a decent company, and they're riding high with a few solid PS1 RPGs under their belt, and they decide it's time to drop one on the N64. That title would come to be Hybrid Heaven, an action RPG that also featured some action-adventure segments. While reviews were mixed, it seems like the general population is a big fan of Hybrid Heaven in 2020. Give it a try for yourself, don't listen to reviews on this one, it looks like a decent game to me. This one is pretty cheap if you want to give it a try yourself. I don't even know what the heck this next game is. Wikipedia isn't even sure how to describe it, but after watching a little gameplay, I guess it's just Fun Run before Fun Run was a thing. Iggy's Wreckin' Balls is something. But it has solid reviews, and I could totally see a much younger me having a blast with it. This might be one to check out with a friend, but certainly not one worth buying the console over. Next up are a couple of soccer titles you don't care about, International Superstar Soccer 64 and 98. Not sure why Konami felt the need to jump 34 years between these two, but okay. Oh yeah, and let's not forget about ISS 2000, it's gonna cost you $60 right now for the cartridge alone. But hey, gotta have those exclusives, right? More sports titles, bear with me. Major League Baseball starring Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Jr.'s Slugfest. They're N64 exclusives, you don't care, I don't care, let's move on. There aren't a lot of rail shooters on the platform, but Knife Edge Nose Gunner is exactly that, and it looks like a pretty sick game. IGN says it's bad, gave it a 4.6 out of 10. If you've ever played this one, drop a comment, let me know how it is. This year, we lost Kobe Bryant and saw a bunch of scalpers buy up all the games he featured on the cover of so they could try to sell them for a fortune. Two of those titles were the NBA courtside games featuring Kobe Bryant, N64 exclusives. It looks like prices are back to normal, so I hope you didn't spend too much on yours. Lode Runner 3D was one of many games that made the jump from 2D to 3D in the late 90s. Lode Runner is a series that began back in 1983. This entry is known for being a pretty hard puzzle platformer, harder than its predecessors, but it doesn't look half bad. Who doesn't love Mario Party? I grew up with 3, but I promise it's not nostalgia speaking when I say that the older Mario Parties are still the best. These titles are must-haves for the console, for sure. 1 and 3 both remain exclusive to the Nintendo 64, but Mario Party 2 has since made its way onto the Wii U eShop. Then you have yet another soccer game for the console. This time it's Mia Hamm's Soccer 64. This was a reskin of the European version, which was titled Michael Owen's World League Soccer 2000.
Okay, next is Mickey's Speedway USA. That rhymes. The game was actually developed by Rareware and uses the same engine as Diddy Kong Racing. It was released first in North America in 2000 and Japan in 2001. Finally, one of those games we get first. It is different than the Game Boy Color game. Mike Piazza's Strike Zone is a baseball game for the Nintendo 64 that was licensed by Major League Baseball. It was developed by Devil's Thumb Entertainment and published by GT Interactive. It was only released in North America because we really like baseball. Yay, baseball. Milo's Astro Lanes is a bowling game set in space. Exactly what it sounds like. It released in North America in 1998 and in Europe in 1999. It was one of few games that utilized the Nintendo 64's Rumble Pack and the Controller Pack. It was rated a 6.1 out of 10 by IGN and a 5.5 out of 10 by GameSpot. Mischief Maker, or Yuke Troublemakers in Japan, is a side-scrolling platform game developed by Treasure and published by Enix and Nintendo. This was the first 2D side-scrolling game for Nintendo 64 and the first Treasure release on Nintendo 64. It's rated a 8 out of 10 on Nintendo Life. This is another one of those games that I'd really like to play. Oh, and I actually have this game. It's Multi-Racing Championship, and it's another racing game, this time developed by Genki and published by Imagineer and Ocean and released in 1997. This is also a game that is compatible with the Rumble Pack and Controller Pack. Okay, rapid fire here. Hopefully I don't mess these up. NBA Jam, 99 and 2000. Yay Basketball. NFL Quarterback Club, 98 and 99. Woo Football. NHL Blades of Steel, 99. And NHL Breakaway, 99. And Olympic Hockey Nagano, 98. Awesome hockey.
Alright, my turn again. Let's see, what's next? Ah, yes, another freaking sports title. PGA European Tour Golf. The only interesting thing I can say about this one is that it's going to cost you $40 or so for just the cartridge. It definitely seems to be an uncommon one for the set collectors out there. Next up is Paperboy, and I'm not going to spend long on this one because it's just the same thing as the original arcade title. I'm not sure why you or anyone needs it in 3 dimensions. Yet another exclusive racer for the platform is Penny Racers, part of the KoroQ series. Titled KoroQ 64 in Japan, the game got alright reviews. This one isn't too memorable, and probably wouldn't be the reason you're buying an N64. The Nintendo 64 didn't have a really strong launch here in the States with a whopping 2 games on the day of release. Super Mario 64 was one, and Pilot Wings was the other. But I guess this was an instance where quality over quantity really spoke volumes. We all know how well Super Mario 64 did, but Pilot Wings 64 also got reviews in the 90% range. Pilot Wings from the Super Nintendo made it onto the Wii and Wii U virtual consoles, but 64 was never brought over. Pokemon Stadium and its sequel are 2 huge reasons you might own an N64 in 2020. Pokemon Stadium is a spin-off without a storyline and pretty much just features the turn-based battling parts of the series, not a whole lot of catching 'em all involved. But anyone who grew up with the game will tell you it's an absolute must-have. It was the first Pokemon game to make it to a home console, and I'm kinda surprised it hasn't made it onto the Wii or Wii U's virtual consoles. Rest assured, if Nintendo decides to make an N64 Mini or bring N64 games to the Switch, these 2 will surely be available. After such classics as Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, and Secret of Mana, you'd think the N64 would be an RPG powerhouse. But here we are talking about another RPG that didn't do so hot. This time it's Quest 64. It did alright financially, and there's definitely a follower base behind it today, but review scores were weak, bringing in 5s and 6s for the most part. The game was developed by Imagineer and did a couple of Game Boy Color sequels. Honestly, when you look at the games Imagineer developed and published, it really makes you wonder how they're still in business 34 years later. Road Rash 64 isn't your typical motorcycle racer. Everyone knows about the violent trilogy of games from the Genesis, but the Nintendo entry in the series got pretty good reviews too. That's right, no more kid-friendly Nintendo. Now you can knock your friends off motorcycles at 120 miles an hour. This was the 5th entry in the series, and the first one not published by EA. That means it was also the first one to not include microtransactions. Robotron 2084 was a fantastic twin-stick shooter from 1982. I freaking love this game. But the only sequel, Robotron 64, released 16 years later and isn't as well known, and I doubt you'll be picking up an N64 for it. Regardless, it's an exclusive and has to be mentioned on this list.
Next is Rocket Robot on Wheels, which is a platformer developed by Sucker Punch Productions and published by Ubisoft. This game was originally developed under the title Sprocket, but was changed 3 months before its release to Rocket because of the trademark conflict with Game Sprockets. Wow, it's actually rated pretty well, with IGN giving a 9 out of 10. Rugrats Scavenger Hunt is an interactive board game developed by Real Time Associates and published by THQ in 1999, and is based on the children's TV show, which is awesome, by the way. I actually really liked the show, but I've never heard of the game. If I'm being honest, I didn't even know it existed.
I don't know what I'd do without you.
And it's more racing with Rush 2 Extreme Racing USA. It was developed by Atari Games and published by Midway Games. It is a sequel to San Francisco Rush Extreme Racing, which was not a Nintendo 64 exclusive. And, yep, cars go vroom. Scooby-Doo Classic Creep Capers. Jinkies, that's a lot of C's. This is an adventure game published by THQ and developed by Terraglyph Interactive Studios. It was supposed to come out on the PlayStation 1, but was eventually cancelled. Shadowgate 64, Trials of the Four Towers, is an adventure game released in 1999. It is a sequel to the original Shadowgate, which was a black and white point-and-click adventure game. This game is rated a 6.2 out of 10 by IGN. Snowboarding Kids is a snowboarding game developed by Racktime? Anyway, and published by Atlas and was released in Japan in 1997, in North America and Europe in 1998. Japan did get a version of the game called Snowboard Kids Plus on the PS1. And then we have the sequel to that, which is Snowboarding Kids 2, which was released in 1999. Stunt Racer 64 is yet another racer, but this one is different. This one is actually pretty expensive because it was only for sale at Blockbuster. The game released on October 1st, 2000, and was developed by Boss Studios and published by Midway Games, and it is rated a 7 out of 10 by IGN.
Next up, Super Bowling. If you're looking to bowl virtually, this game will cost you over $300 for just the cartridge right now, so maybe consider checking out Wii Sports instead. You might actually pick up an N64 for Superman 64. From what I understand, this game is quite an experience. In case you've been living under a rock, Superman 64 is supposed to be one of the worst games ever made, and it was made even more famous by the angry video game nerd. Tetris meets the third dimension. This game was actually intended to be an Atari Jaguar exclusive titled Fear with a PH, but somewhere down the road, Nintendo acquired the license and it became the first puzzle game for their new platform in 1997. Then, the new Tetris, that's the actual name, came out in 1999, and it was anything but new. It really just went back to the basics. The if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality was certainly shown here. More racing games, here we go. This time we have 3 Top Gear games, Hyperbike, Overdrive, and Rally 2. They're all reviewed around the 75% range. If you're into arcade racers, I swear this is the perfect console for you. Quick editor's note here, Top Gear Rally 1 is also an N64 exclusive.
Turok 3 Shadow of Oblivion is the only exclusive Turok game on Nintendo 64, as of right now, because the first 2 Turok games were just recently released on the Switch. This game is also on the Game Boy Color, but it is not the same game. Wow, I didn't realize how many snowboarding games there were on Nintendo 64. But next is Twisted Edge Extreme Snowboarding. It was released on Nintendo 64 in North America on November 10th, 1998, and in Europe on March 12th, 1999. This game is also known as King Hill 64 Extreme Snowboarding. Like, King of the Hill? Is that what they were going for? Anyway, bring your checkered boards, ladies and gents, because next is Virtual Chess 64. I know, exciting. So, yep, this game is chess, and it was developed by Titus France and released in 1998. Alright, we are in the W's. You know what that means? Wrestling! Okay, let's play some rapid fire here. Hopefully I don't mess up these W's. So we have WCW versus NOW World Tour. This is the second best selling wrestling game on Nintendo 64 and probably available at every Goodwill across America. Then we have WCW/NOW Revenge and WWF No Mercy and WWF WrestleMania 2000. What a time to be a wrestling fan. Now we're on to some more golf with Waialae Country Club, true golf classics. If you're wondering why that word looks so weird, it's Hawaiian. Want to know more about it? Yeah, me either. Then we have Wipeout 64. This was previously owned by Sony Computer Entertainment and was the first Wipeout to make it to a Nintendo console. It was a prequel to the PS1's Wipeout 2097. Road Driver Championship is another racing game developed by Boss Game Studios and published by Midway. Wow, Midway really likes racing games. It was released in 1999 and was rated a 8.7 out of 10 by Nintendo Power. And ending my list with something exciting. It is Xena Warrior Princess, The Talisman of Fate. This is a 1999 fighting game developed by Sapphire Corporation and published by Titus Interactive. It is based on the TV series Xena Warrior Princess. This game seems to be really hit or miss among critics. GameSpot giving it a 2.8 out of 10. Game Informer giving it a 3.5 out of 10, Nintendo Power giving it a 6.8 out of 10, and IGN giving it a 7.4 out of 10.
Alright, you may be thinking, Christian, Hannah, what about Diddy Kong Racing? Look, despite what you think of it, Diddy Kong Racing DS is actually a remake, not a sequel. I personally wouldn't count it as an N64 exclusive, but that's just me.
Okay, when you asked me to come do this video, I did not know that you're going to make us read all 100 different games. I mean, why did we even have to mention every sports title? No one even plays those in 2020.
Well, it certainly does prove my point a little bit. The Nintendo 64 has some amazing first-party and third-party titles, there's no denying that. But how necessary is it that you really own the console 24 years later? I mean, if you're a collector like us, you're obviously interested in the history and the importance of the console, so this question doesn't really apply to you. But for the rest of you, most of the quality titles on this console have already been ported and you can play them on other platforms. Quality over quantity here.
That's very true. You can play almost all of the Rare games on Xbox One's Rare Replay. Super Mario 64 was ported to the DS. Mario Party and Mario Kart have been on the Virtual Console for years, but I think playing it on the actual hardware is really big for some people. And I think, personally for me, playing Super Smash Bros. On a CRT with your 4 bulky Nintendo 64 controllers is the best way to play that game.
Yeah, and I totally get that, but if you're not in it for the nostalgic factor, or you're not a collector trying to spend hundreds of dollars to get all of your childhood favorites back, there are definitely cheaper ways to go. Like Hannah said, you can check out the Wii U Virtual Console. Unfortunately, the Wii's eShop is dead, or whatever, the Wii Shop channel. But the Wii U's eShop is still alive and thriving as of the making of this video, and it's got a lot of great titles on it. Other than that, emulation is a thing, or you can even check out the EverDrive, which is just a, like $150, $200 cartridge that has every single Nintendo 64 game on it. It might sound like a lot of money up front, but it'll save you a lot of money in the long run. Plus, you never know when Nintendo is going to throw a Nintendo 64 Mini out. You know, one of these holidays it's got to be coming. Or the Nintendo Switch Online could have N64 online at any point.
Please, Nintendo, please do it soon.
Well, Hannah, this has been just awesome. I'm so glad that you could make it down here to help me make this video. You are such a Nintendo 64 expert.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Alright, guys, look out for the next episode of the Unlockable podcast. Me and Hannah have a lot of awesome topics coming your way, and we will see you guys next time on Bird Dog Gaming.
Bye.